Good afternoon. Hey, Andrea and Marcus. Thank you all for being here. And I see we have a lot of attendees already joining us, and I just want to welcome everybody. My name is Susan Askew. I'm class of 86 of the college and Associate Vice President for Alumni and Parent Programs. And we're excited to share some good information with you all today. And I can hear the beautiful sound of the Breslin bells in the tower. And so um, I know that it is time to get started. We want to be respectful of everybody's time and get to the presentation. So what we're going to do is I'm going to introduce our panelists. So the topic is study away, and it is one of the topics that we get a lot of questions about. I say they get them more than I do, but it's also something that's part of the Sewanee pledge. And I don't know if they were going to say that, but um, when your student comes to Sewanee, part of the deal is we will guarantee that they can take a semester abroad. It's one of the things, and so it's a great opportunity for your student, and they'll explain how it works and how credit transfers, how it gets paid for with your tuition and all those kinds of things. And then after that, we will open it up for questions. And several people submitted questions ahead of time. And I think I have shared those with them. And if we don't get to all of those, we'll take them at the end of the presentation. I should let you know it's being recorded if you have to jump off or if you um, got on a little late. There will be a replay, and we'll share that out with everybody. But I can't wait for you guys to meet our awesome colleagues. We've got Andrea Del Basso, and she is the director, and Marcus Murphy is the associate director. So they are the experts, and I'm going to turn it over to you all.
Great. Thank you, Susan. Thanks for having us. We're excited to share a little bit with y'all about Study Away. We are in the Office of Global Citizenship. And so, this is sort of our mission statement that we desire to train students to address global problems, and we promote activities that link Sewanee with the rest of the world. So, we're going to talk a little bit about how we hope to accomplish that with Study Away and just a little bit more about our office. So, we are a team of six, and so we offer a myriad of things. Study Away is not the only thing that we do in our office. We do a lot more than that, but we do international student and scholar support. So, international students who come here and study at Sewanee, for example, some faculty members who are international and need to be sponsored for a visa. We also work with them. We do a lot of faculty training as well. And we do a lot of the intercultural competence development. We do that with other departments on campus, as well as with students who not only do study away, but maybe who do other programs that are not credit bearing. And then, but today, for today's purpose, we're primarily going to talk about study away and what we do with that. So, the way that we'll structure our presentation today is we'll talk a little bit about student outcomes and institutional goals as well for Study Away. We'll give some program overview, just help to describe the kinds of programs that we offer and the differences between those programs. We'll also cover some of the nuts and bolts, which a lot of the frequently asked questions come from that. So things like finances, credit transfer, and then we'll talk a little bit about the study away process. So I'm going to start us out with some of the outcomes and the goals of study away. And we are using the term study away more than study abroad, simply because we offer programs during that semester or summer that are within the US, for example. So we offer several programs that are study away, not simply study abroad. And study away is a more all-encompassing term to describe both and. So both the domestic opportunities as well as the international opportunities. So some of the learning outcomes we have for students, I'm sure, as y'all can imagine, we really want students to develop, open-mindedness, intercultural competence, which is why we use our assessment tool to see how they are developing those skills. Interpersonal communication, we want students to learn to be adaptable and flexible. And those are kind of the soft skills we're looking to develop in students. But then we also have some student success goals with our study away and study abroad programs. That could be language acquisition, learning a second or third or fourth language through an abroad program. It could be getting really good internship or research experience that's going to set students apart whenever they apply for jobs after graduation or graduate school programs after graduation. We also try and align our programs with academic departments so that students are getting experience within a certain academic discipline that maybe they wouldn't get that experience here at Sewanee or take certain courses in those disciplines. And then institutionally, we are really hoping to, I would say, we want to diversify our students that are going abroad. And I use that term very broadly because we're constantly looking at, how can we get more student athletes abroad? How can we get students to go to more global South countries? How can we get students to who have high financial need or moderate financial need? How can we give them the opportunity to travel outside of the country in a situation that could be the only time they get to travel outside of the country? How can we increase, I would say, certain populations of students that are historically underrepresented in study away and study abroad opportunities based on national data? So those are some of the institutional goals that we have. And I will say about 50% of our students study away on either a semester, a summer, or another short-term program. So I'm going to turn it over to Marcus, and he's going to give you a program overview.
Right. Good evening, everybody. Yeah, so first I wanted to talk about generally the three main types of study abroad trips that students can go on. And those you can see here at the bottom left are going with a provider, faculty-led, or direct enrollment. So for provider, essentially that's a third-party company that specializes in study abroad. Some of the bigger names that come to mind are IES, World Stride, CIEE. I advise for environmental studies programs often, and so SIT is one of the programs that is common in environmental studies. And you can see here within the providers, those companies, there's two main types of programs through them as well. And there's going to a center, and I just mentioned SIT for environmental studies. A lot of those programs, maybe you're out in the bush and doing research the whole time, and you're only working with that center, that company, and learning often with just their professionals. And then there's also the DE, the direct enrollment model through providers. So one of the first ones that comes to mind, I was talking with a student today about a new program just below Naples at the Santa Ana Institute. So that's the college there, but we go through a company, Arcadia, a larger provider, to get our students to the Santa Ana Institute. So that's working through those third-party providers, faculty-led. We will highlight those programs here in a moment, each of those semester-long programs, but there's also some summer programs for faculty-led. And yeah, those head to all parts of the world as well. And then direct enrollment. So this is when we as a university have a direct relationship with the university and allow our students to go and essentially become a student on these other campuses for a semester. So we have these in Japan right now. For environmental studies, a lot of students are enjoying a program at the University of Canterbury in New Zealand. We have St. Andrews in Scotland and a few more. All right, so those were the three main types of programs for whether you're going in the summer, in the winter, or a full semester. Those all three types can be applied to those different links as well. And then you'll see here embedded course as well. We're seeing more and more where Andrea is actually teaching a course this spring where It's in collaboration with our Office of Civic Engagement, and they'll be doing a class all semester, meeting weekly, and then spring break they'll go and do a service trip in Costa Rica. And yeah, currently we have options on every continent. So all right, moving along. As mentioned, those faculty programs, which we love to get our students abroad, and often going with a faculty member can encourage along some students who might not often be considering it. And we're really excited to have all of these programs available currently. And these can range from semester to a lot of these are only offered one semester each academic year. So we have the Sewanee and Friends program. South Africa is a new one. We were previously in Ghana. We've had to shift. New York City, we have a full semester there where you're interning for 2-year courses. You're doing an internship. Spain, and then Ecuador as well. All right, and just a general overview of some of our numbers for StudyWay. You can see here, this was the 2023-2024 academic year. We sent around 255 students abroad when we total up Advent, Easter, and summer programs. Female numbers make up a larger percentage of the students studying away. That's pretty consistent with national numbers as well. STEM, I think often STEM students are hesitant to consider study away, or it's seen as having a few extra hurdles when you're a STEM student. But actually, we have 40% of that 255 students were STEM majors. So even lots of opportunities for those programs as well. Athletes, we get around 21% of that number. And then you can see with the Sewanee and direct enroll program. So again, direct enroll being you go to a college that we have a relationship with and essentially became a student at that college for the semester. Around 60% of that number were on those types of programs. So only around 40% were going with those third-party providers. So I'm gonna turn it back to Andrea to get into the nitty-gritty.
All right. So we'll talk a little bit about nuts and bolts of Study Away. And as Susan had mentioned earlier, the Sewanee Pledge, we kind of start with that. So the Sewanee Pledge covers basically three aspects of the institution, but how it relates specifically to Study Away is that the pledge says we pledge to help Sewanee graduates find their place in an increasingly interconnected world by providing you with access to a semester-long study abroad program at no additional tuition cost. So let me break that down insofar as finances are concerned. So essentially, students, when they study abroad for a semester, so this is for semester programs, not summer, not winter term, not the embedded programs that have a spring break travel, for example. These are semester only programs that students are charged tuition, fees, room and board for the semester that they go abroad or away. So they're charged whatever they are charged at Sewanee, and then Sewanee will pay the partners on the student's behalf. There are some room and board considerations with that. You can see I said they're charged tuition fees, room and board. I'll come back to that in just a moment because I do want to mention that when I said that students will pay essentially what they pay at Sewanee for their semester abroad, that's because all grants, loans, and institutional, for example, Sewanee scholarships, they apply to semester programs. So if whatever the charge is, then the scholarship's going to go on top of that charge to deduct it. And then, like I said, students will pay what they normally pay on campus. Now, there are some room and board considerations. So the vast majority of our programs, room is part of the program and we pay that to the provider. There are usually multiple housing options on programs. So there almost always is a housing option that includes some board. So at Sewanee, for example, students are charged a board plan or a meal plan for 21 meals per week. And when students go abroad, If there is a meal plan for 21 meals per week, then they, of course, are charged a board plan. If there's a board plan for 14 meals per week, then we will prorate the refund to or refund to the student of 10 meals per, no, that's the wrong. So if there's 14 meals per week, we will prorate a refund of 7 meals. 14 plus 7 equals 21, right? So that's kind of the way that the board refunds work. Now, it's important to note, because we do get some questions about this, that if there are multiple housing options available, one of them includes board and one does not. Let's just say it's a self-catered apartment, and the student chooses a self-catered apartment. They will not be refunded all of their board. We see that as a student is requesting, or a student is choosing a board plan or a housing option that doesn't offer board. And so we're still going to do the refund based on the housing option that includes board. So happy to talk through that more if we need to in the Q&A session or the Q&A after this, but wanted to mention it here. Additional costs, a lot of times we get questions about what costs, are there additional costs? And yes, there of course are. There's no additional tuition cost. There's no additional fees necessarily charged by our office or the university. But additional costs would be travel, right? International airfare. If the country requires a visa, that of course would be an additional cost that the student would pay out of pocket. If it's an international program and students have to get a passport, that of course is an additional cost. Any required immunizations from the host country would be an additional cost. For example, our Ecuador program that Marcus mentioned, that's a faculty-led program. They go to the Amazon in Ecuador. So they are required to get a yellow fever vaccination. And so I do want to mention it is required immunizations. So some immunizations are recommended, but that immunization is actually required by the program. The students cannot participate unless they have their yellow fever vaccine. Books and supplies would be an out-of-pocket cost for the students as well. And if there are any optional upgrades or optional additions, so for example, course fees, if a student wants to take a studio art course and there's a painting charge, just as it would be at Sewanee, there's usually an upgrade for studio art courses, then that would be something the student would pay. If there was a housing upgrade, if a student wanted a studio apartment, for example, and there was an additional $300, that would be out of pocket for the student. And then there sometimes are optional excursions through the program. They might do a weekend trip. If they go to Spain, for example, maybe there's a weekend trip to Morocco. That would have an additional fee, and then the student would pay for that directly. As I mentioned earlier, we do pay the charges for the study abroad program on behalf of the student. So that means if there's an application fee, Sewanee pays it. If there is a mandatory deposit that is non-refundable, Sewanee pays it. In the case that the student chooses to withdraw and it's after a full refund, then Sewanee will pass on fees to the student that we have paid on behalf of that student. So I just want to be forthright with that. So moving to our next slide with finances, there are scholarship opportunities available. Many of our third-party providers offer scholarships. So if you go in an IES program, many of them offer scholarships. A lot of scholarships they have, many of them will do an automatic scholarship for high financial needs student, just straight out the gate. A lot of our provider programs will also offer airline credit or help pay for an airline ticket. So that's so helpful. Whenever we advise students, we usually ask them if they have financial concerns. And if they say they do, then we talk with them a little bit more about some more affordable programs. So for example, programs where maybe they don't need a visa, so they're not having to pay for a visa. We also offer some scholarships through the Office of Global Citizenship, thanks to some very generous donors. We have a Dunn Rankin Fund, and then we have the Holland West Fund. And these are two endowed funds that we can basically distribute scholarships to, that we use to distribute scholarships to high financial needs students from underrepresented student groups. Some of our academic departments are able to award scholarship funds as well. We see some of these come through primarily on those faculty-led programs. primarily in the summer, but also some will receive academic departmental funds for semester programs too to help out with some of those transportation costs, for example. And then there's a number of governmental and educational entities that offer scholarships as well. Um, Through the Office of Global Citizenship, like I said, we have a number of different types of programs. Some of those programs we've identified as affordable programs, and students who choose to go on those programs will automatically get a $500 to $1,000 travel grant. There's no application. We just put it on their student account. Just as a note, if a student has work study funds or if they're a proctor on campus and they get a stipend or their housing is waived, those funds they do not apply when the student goes abroad. So that is something we try to talk with our students about, just helping them think through budgeting for study abroad, because sometimes if they're depending on $900 for their work study and they're not getting it while they're abroad, they need to do some advanced preparation for that. The next thing we're going to talk about is credit, I believe. So when students study abroad on an approved program, we vetted the programs and all of their credit comes back to Sewanee. So it's all going to come back. They'd have to decide what bucket it goes in. So essentially, they can put it into their major bucket, they can put it into their minor bucket, or a general education bucket, or an elective bucket, but it all comes back. So essentially, the major credit depends on the department. Most of our departments approve up to 2 courses for the major when students go abroad. Some approve more, some will approve only one, but that's something we talk to the students about when they're going abroad. Students can also usually get up to 2 courses for their minor when they're abroad. Many of them can satisfy certificate requirements. So certificate requirements or pre-professional program requirements, like pre-health, for example. Many of them can satisfy those requirements abroad. Students can take up to 2 general education classes abroad. And for the majority of our programs, you'll see a note here on transfer credits. The majority of our programs, the credits come back in as transfer credit, just as they would if a student went to UTC, for example, or to Vanderbilt for a summer. So students, in order for that credit to transfer back for that class, they must earn a C or higher. And then that credit will come back. It's going to show on their transcript, but it does not affect their GPA. So if a student has a 4.0 GPA and they study abroad on a provider program in Spain, and they get all B's, for example, they're still going to have a 4.0 GPA. It's just going to show for that semester, it'll show the courses with, the B, for example, on their transcript. Now, the exception to this transfer of credits doesn't affect their GPA. The exception is the faculty-led programs that Marcus had mentioned earlier. So our Sewanee in Spain program, for example, is a Sewanee program. So all of the courses are basically approved through our curricular committee, and they are listed on the registrar's website. And so when students take those courses, they are, graded, and they do come back to affect the GPA. So on every single one of our faculty-led programs, a portion of that credit will affect the GPA. Some of those programs are the students take some courses at another university, and so that's transfer credits. Maybe half their credits come for their GPA and half are transfer. But I do want to, there's a distinction in that. I will say the vast majority of our students is coming in as transfer credit, the courses that they take. But in certain instances, it is going to be faculty credit that comes in and affects their GPA. The students, to kind of make sure before they go abroad that they're taking only things that they need. This first thing that we have listed is a course pre-approval form. That's through the registrar. And I think everyone who talks to the student at the university has to sign it. So their academic advisor signs it, the major chair signs it, the minor chair signs it, the registrar signs it, the student signs it. So basically they list on this pre-approval form the courses they want to take, and they're going to know before they go abroad how those courses are coming in. So we typically recommend that students start thinking about study abroad their freshman year, just when it comes to planning their course schedules, holding off on classes, for example, that they might want to take abroad, or taking classes here so that they have more opportunity to take classes that interest them when they're abroad, instead of having to satisfy a very specific requirement, like a statistics requirement. So that's, I think, all I've got for credits. And I believe I'm going to turn it back over to Marcus to talk about the application process.
All right. So we have actually shifted our process for the Sewanee semester programs. We've actually backed that up a little bit to give everybody a little more time and breathing room when getting prepared to go abroad. So now we're basically about a year out. Well, I'll show you on the next slide a more detailed timeline. Technically, for the Sewanee Pledge, you'll see in the Sewanee Pledge official writing, right? That's for your junior year. However, sophomores and seniors may petition to study abroad, and we have a pretty high approval rate as long as we can make sure everything with your credits are going to work out in terms of studying abroad as a sophomore or a senior. And then for summer programs, well, technically a lot of rising sophomores or freshmen choose to go in that. So a freshman currently can easily go in those summer programs with a faculty member if they would like. So students must have a 2.5 GPA or above to take advantage of the Sewanee Pledge. And if they have a 2.0 to 2.49, they can petition. Now, students must be in good academic and disciplinary standing as well. And then students must choose an approved and authorized program. So here in a moment, we'll do a really quick, brief look at our website, and you'll see a long list of our approved programs there. So lots of options. And if for some reason there's only one program that's going to work for them and it just does not happen to be on that approved program list, if we start the process early enough, they can petition for that program to be approved as well. All right, so yeah, into the more detailed look at our timeline. As you can see, well, currently we are in the process of advising for students who want to study abroad next spring. That's spring of 2026. So you can see if we look at the spring column here, that first set of deadlines, the February 15th, pretty soon here, we'll have our first round of deadlines for students hoping to go abroad next spring for the semester. You can see we will have a second round of deadlines for students that are going specifically on Sewanee-led programs, because those are Sewanee's programs. We're able to allow students to make that decision a lot later. So if you have a student, a child who's still hoping to get abroad this fall, and that's the only time that's really going to work for them, well, technically there may still be an opportunity for them if they're willing to go in one of the Sewanee-led programs, if that works out for them. So as you can see, right, for the advent or the fall of 2025, our first deadline will be February 15th, specifically for those Sewanee programs. So yeah, we basically advise about a year out. So students who are currently a freshman, but they want to go the fall of their junior year, they'll start that process soon after school starts in the fall, this coming fall. All right. And then, yeah, I don't think we have to get into the weeds of all the different deadlines, but essentially once they get in this request to study away, which doesn't, once you fill out this form for us, you're not required to study abroad. So even if your student's just a little bit interested, encourage them to go ahead and get in that system for whatever semester they're exploring. And yeah, and then we have a long list of different forms that will be in different deadlines there. So I think that will do that for now. This is a video of our website. If you just Google Sewanee Study Away, you should find this website. You can see first thing, that approved program list I just mentioned with all the different places available there. We also have detailed outline of the process for semester programs versus summer programs, and we update this based on which one we're advising for. You can see tabs for funding your study abroad, and that includes some of those scholarships, more information for families, and then also their frequent FAQ, frequently asked questions tab there at the bottom. So that was just a really quick breeze over our website. If you just Google Sewanee Study Away, it should be that first click. All right. And as far as returning to campus, so we do offer a few different programs so that students can return to campus and bring all their learnings with them and yeah, share it with the greater community. So first thing here, we see Global 102. Often students come back with 15 credit hours versus the regular 16 credit hours. This course was partly designed to fill that gap where they can make up that 1 credit hour, but also it's just a really great way for students to, as I mentioned, bring back that learning and put it to work here on campus. So we have a project that during this class called Global Citizenship in Action. We spend a whole day working with students on how to market their study away program, how to include that on their resume, how to speak about that, what is often a transformational experience to future employees in interviews. So even if you don't need that 1 credit hour, that can be a really valuable class for students. And as a previous returnee of Study Away, I know you can often quickly bore your friends with all your stories, but we never get bored. And so if you take this class with us, you'll have time to share all of your adventures. Study Away ambassadors, often, well, these can be very, at the end of the day, students want to hear from other students about Study Away and their experiences. And so upon returning, you can apply to be a Study Away ambassador. We have Study Away showcases where students can share more about their experiences. And then I want to make sure we point out 2 really great opportunities for students, specifically in the summer for these 2 programs, and this is open to all students. The Freeman Asia Internship Program is a new program. Last summer was the first time we were able to offer this, and we were able to offer up to $9,500 for 10 students to do internships in Asia in the summer. Really exciting new opportunity. We had students last summer working at a cosmetics company in South Korea, a gaming company in Kyoto, Tokyo. This coming summer, we have 10 students headed to, I think, 7 different countries in Asia currently is the outlook for that. So a really exciting and up to $9,500, which can pretty much cover the whole internship in summer. So in travel as well. And then also the Bill Research, which is not it's not only Asia, that's also, well, pretty much anywhere in the globe where English isn't the main language. And this research project can really be any topic in social sciences. And we encourage students to work alongside of a faculty member to develop that project. But again, a lot of freedom to go and explore their interests globally in the summer. All right. Well, I think that about wraps it up for our presentation. And I think Andrew is going to go ahead and address some of the questions that we received earlier and maybe turn it back over to you, Susan. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Marcus. Yeah. We wanted to just we received some questions prior to the webinar, so we wanted to answer those. Susan, I'm going to address the ones that you've sent us. You might have had more that came in, and so please definitely prompt us on those afterward. But the first question I had was, can students study abroad more than once? For example, can they do a 3-week summer program and also a fall semester program? The answer to that question is yes. Students can study abroad more than once on a summer and then semester. The really important thing to consider is that the Sewanee Pledge only applies to 1 semester. So students can study abroad multiple semesters if they want to. However, they will not receive any of their institutional aid on a second semester abroad. It will only apply to the first semester. So that's just an important consideration, but short-term programs and semester programs is no problem. An accurate idea of the cost of a semester abroad versus one on campus. That question, the answer to that is going to vary greatly by location based on the transportation cost. For example, the airfare or a visa or an immunization. I would say that if a student does the study in New York City program, for example, which is a domestic program, that student's going to get a $1,000 travel grant straight off the get, straight off the bat. And provided they are able to budget their money effectively in New York City, which I think is a challenge because of all the amazing places to eat out, they really shouldn't spend any extra money than that what they would spend on campus. We give them a transportation stipend to use the metro, for example, when they're there. They can use some of that $1,000 travel grant to book their flight there and back. So that program shouldn't really have any more out-of-pocket expenses. And I would say, in fact, they might be able to save a little bit of money if they were conscious of their budget. The program that Marcus mentioned, the Ghana program, which we have now redirected to South Africa, that was our most expensive program out of pocket. That cost about $3,400 on average for students out of pocket when you take into consideration the yellow fever immunization that was required for Ghana, the anti-malarial pills, the visa, the airfare, for example. That was one of our more expensive programs. And even though we offered that $1,000 travel grant from that program, that would still make your out-of-pocket expenses $2,400. So I hope that gives a good kind of overview of that. But there's some kind of sub questions of, how do you budget? What are some ways to save? So the Funding Your Education Abroad link on our website, or Funding Your Study Abroad, I believe is what it's called, kind of goes through some really helpful budgeting tips for students. And it also gives a budgeting worksheet, and we have some like tips and tricks, if you will, for students. And it's also something we talk with students about when they come and meet with us. There are a couple of countries, a couple of locations where students can actually work on a student visa. That's very, very rare. There's only a couple of countries like that. But we can kind of work with students who have really specific questions about budgeting and saving money. But I think we answered the other questions about that. We answered the questions about how the study abroad hours are applied to their degrees. So essentially, the number of abroad trips that students have, it says that are built into their 4 years. Most students, about 50% of our students will do one semester abroad. And then many of them, they might do a semester abroad and then also a summer abroad, or maybe a semester abroad and then like the Freeman Asia internship, for example, or a semester abroad, and our athletes go on trips every 3 years or so. And so they may do some of those programs as well. But it's usually one semester abroad for the entire time that they're here. If there are many students from Sewanee going in the same program, how do they link up with each other? So that's a great question. So we have an orientation before students depart. And at our orientation, we sometimes break them into sort of geographic areas at the beginning through an icebreaker, where we say, oh, if you're going to Europe, or if you're going to Western Europe, you've got a blue name tag. Or if you're going to Africa, you've got a green name tag, or something like that. Another way that we do it is sometimes we'll share a Google Sheet to all of our students going abroad and say, if you want to put your information on this sheet for other students, you can do that. So we leave it up to the student of how much information they want to share. But that's, I would say, the two ways primarily that we connect them. Of course, if it's a Sewanee faculty-led program, they're doing orientations as a small group before they go, so they know who's going a lot more in detail, I would say, than like a provider program or all of our students going to Italy with different providers. And then what year do most students study away? Most of our students who study away are juniors. We do have sophomores and seniors, but I would say the majority are juniors when they study away. There is a new visa requirement for Italy. So that was a question, and we do send a lot of students to Italy. So this was not pleasant information for our office. But essentially, different visa requirements exist for different countries, as you can imagine. And those are governed by that country. We have no control over that. So South Africa, for example, sets their own visa requirements. Italy, of course, does the same. And so Italy is now requiring students to go in person to a consulate. So what that means is they can't mail off their visa applications anymore. They can't do it online. They have to physically go in person to the nearest consulate, depending on their permanent address. And that nearest consulate could be Detroit or New York City or Houston. So that's something that students have to plan for with the Italy visa requirements. And those requirements, most of them stay the same, but they can also change the requirements. The country can change the requirements on an annual basis. Um, and then I think that's all the questions, Susan, that I have. I don't know if you have more that you've gotten in and that you want to share with us.
Yeah, we have some people have been asking through the Q&A, and feel free to do that. And then afterwards, I'm going to share the contact info so that if you think of something you didn't ask while we were here this afternoon, you'll be able to ask it. But there's a couple questions that say, since that timeline for this coming fall, they've already had to apply. There's a couple people who are acting like they don't have any information yet about that, and should they have that? They want to make plane ticket arrangements. They want to start planning, and they haven't received any information.
Yeah, so is the question about program information for the fall? I guess I can look in the Q&A chat. Here, let me pull that up.
Will we receive information from the program itself regarding when to move in, housing options? She's going to Copenhagen, and they'd like to book their flights. But the other person said, our sophomore tells us they're definitely going abroad in the fall, but we've not received any info from Sewanee or the program. Does this seem right? Should we have?
Yes, that seems right. And no, you should not have.
Okay.
Yeah, so the fall programs, likely many of that information will start to come out. I would say, Marcus, you might have another perspective, fall, maybe March, April, May for more specific dates and things like that. So if you think about when Sewanee will publish information for our fall dates, our fall programs, our fall schedule of classes, for example, you can kind of use that as a litmus test. I'm sorry, I'm in my office. The sun is, I keep moving my computer, but I'm having to get a different angle because the sun, it's coming in beautifully, but it's glaring on my face.
We don't know how to act with all that sun.
Yeah.
It looks like your Swanee halo.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, go ahead,
Sorry,
Marcus.
there was one about summer programs that are available to students. I just shared that link. Hopefully that went through. Those were specifically Sewanee programs put together by Sewanee faculty. There is looking at our approved programs for the semester can give you an idea of the programs that could be available for the summer as well. But we would advise if a student, the Sewanee faculty programs for the summer are not of interest, come and talk with our summer advisor, who's Georgia, and go to our website for more information on the summer process. But essentially, there could be a very wide range of programs that are available, and so yeah, we don't keep all those listed on our website necessarily, but.
And then I just wanted to follow up. I saw another question. So basically saying that we won't know where the students are going in fall 2025 until April. No, that's not the message I meant to communicate. So students should have already chosen their fall 2025 program through our office. They should have already told us where they are going for fall 2025. What they aren't going to have right now, as of February the 3rd, they're not going to have the exact date of arrival. They may not even have their visa guidelines from the provider. Now they have plenty of time to get their visa. Many times, visa and passports, they work very differently from one another. So a passport, you can apply for whenever, as early as you want. It takes, 6 weeks to 3 months, depending on when it is to process it. Whereas a visa, many times they tell you you can't apply for a visa more than 6 months before you're arriving. So it kind of becomes a window of opportunities to when to apply for your visa. So at this point, it's too early to apply for the majority of any visas for our programs. Or yeah, because that would be a August 3rd start date, which is not common, right? So I think that information, once students apply to their program, they'll typically get a portal like students got when they came to Sewanee, and that, they're through their login. And so that will send them information about, oh, now's a time to apply for your housing. Here's a housing questionnaire. Now's a time that you should be looking at booking tickets. Now's a time that you need to apply for your visa. So all of those tasks will be organized and prompted through the study abroad program. So, but at this point, students should have already met with us, should have already communicated to us where they're going for their fall program. They just may not have all of the exact dates for everything at this moment.
Right, thank you. Could you just clarify a little bit with you said their Sewanee tuition package is transferred over. Does that include scholarships that they receive or just financial aid?
Both. So
Okay,
yeah. So if they receive any state or federal financial aid, grants, for example, loans, for example, they'll still receive those. If they receive a $10,000 Sewanee scholarship each semester, they'll still receive that, at least for that first semester of study away. Like I said, they can go again a second semester, but they won't receive any of the institutional scholarships for the second semester.
great, fantastic. There's several questions about visas, and I think you've covered a lot of them, but if there's trouble, you guys will guide them. Is that right? Give
Yeah,
them good advice?
yeah. So the visa piece, we basically our programs, the program itself is going to be the best source of information for the visa application process. And that's because, again, those visa processes change. And so our on-site provider in Italy, for example, they are going to be the best advisor for the Italian visa process. Now, we're going to know a little bit about the process and we'll be able to communicate with students, which we've already done, to say, hey, the visa process for Italy is different. Alert, alert, pay attention, right? And then most of the time, students will need a letter of enrollment from Sewanee. We give that to students. Where we run into some issues with the visa is that I think sometimes students approach our office in the 11th hour and they want a visa, an enrollment letter, and it's a Friday afternoon. We can't get them that until a little bit later. But we do offer those enrollment letters. We actually have a Google form that students complete to say, this is where I'm going, this is what I need. I need a financial aid letter. Any of those things, we're happy to provide that assistance, whatever they need from Sewanee. But the step-by-step processes, the really nitty-gritty, is going to come from the program provider. And so we'll keep directing students to that person or that entity simply because we don't want to give conflicting or inaccurate information to the student.
Great. So I'm sure if they're like my college son, if they've missed those deadlines, are there ways to still try to see what might be available? Or are they hardcore deadlines?
Yeah, so the deadlines that we have are pretty strict deadlines for study abroad. So we closed our fall applications for fall 2025. Right. Yeah. I have to think through the years. We closed that deadline in December. And then we have extended it for Sewanee-led programs. Now, if a student has a significant academic need or an accommodation, for example, that is needed, where these 5 programs or 6 programs where they will not work. So, I met with a student today, for example, who is a little bit behind on her hours that she's earned, and so she really needs to go in a program where she can get more than 16 credits abroad. So for in that situation, for example, we can talk with that student and see if we can slide the student into a different program. But it would have to be a significant academic need, more so than just I want to go with my friends on this program in Italy, or I want to go. I've heard that New Zealand's amazing, and I want to go to New Zealand, right? So it would have to be something that is specifically tied, to the students, because it at this point we have 175 students who've applied for fall 2025, by the deadline and everything. So like I said, we encourage those students to come and have a conversation with us, with their advisors. I did see a question about if a student isn't comfortable with their advisor, can they speak to someone else? Absolutely. We all have certain areas that we advise best. I don't know if I say best on, but where we're more comfortable advising because we're more comfortable with the academics in those areas. But half the time I'll talk to Marcus's advisees, or he'll talk to mine, or anything like that. We know a lot about a lot of the programs. So students are welcome to meet with an advisor that they feel comfortable with talking through the process.
There's a couple questions about housing, and it sounds like there are options that come with most programs, but you could find your own housing, but that wouldn't be covered if it's more than what the normal housing is. Is that correct?
So our housing policy for study abroad is that students are required to choose housing through the provider or through the direct enrollment partner. They are not allowed to do independent housing unless they kind of petition through our office and we review the petition and approve it. And it would have to be a significant need for the student, or for example, if a student had family in the area, that would be a reason that we sometimes have students say, hey, I want to stay with my aunt that I only get to see once a year or every couple of years, but it would have to be something significant. The students who've done independent housing, and before we implement this petition process, they would get into a lot of complicated situations with landlords or with roommates backing out, and then they were stuck with leases they couldn't get out of, or paying triple for housing than what they expected. So there is a way students can petition for independent housing, but it's something that we review very, very, very closely before we allow that. And so our providers and our direct enrollment partners, they require that paperwork from Sewanee before they approve that.
What about health insurance when the student's abroad? Do they need to do anything additional than what they already have?
So their health insurance, they are enrolled in health insurance either through their partner, through our partner, or through us. So they're covered for the semester programs. There's no additional cost. It's included in the program.
Right. So if you're a freshman and you want to go away fall of 2026, when they get back on campus in August, that's when they apply. Is that right? This fall.
Mm-hmm. That is right. I'm looking.
I've been trying to type in some
I saw
answers
that.
here. So, um,
Is the Oxford Study Away program any different?
Yeah, so I'm looking at that one right now. So yes, we have a few. So Marcus showed just real briefly sort of a chart of our application process. That's also explained on the website. So there's a lot of information. I know we're covering a lot of information. So that study away or studyabroad.sewanee.edu website is going to be a great source of information. Their application process, it discusses this in greater detail. We have certain programs that are early action programs. Those programs have an earlier deadline than the standard deadline. These are programs where we either have a significant amount of interest or the programs are a really high cost program. But for whatever reason, we have to be very specific about the students that we send on those programs. So those applications are an early action application, and all of those programs are spelled out on the website. But yes, Oxford is one of those. I'm
For
looking
this
about
one on neuroscience, this might not be completely up to date, but I'm about to answer with several program names. We
the
do have an advisor for neuroscience, so and that's Sarah Morhevsky, the third advisor in our office.
Um, but yeah, so neuroscience, I appreciate that question. So one of the tasks our office has started doing is generating advice, like top recommended programs for according to major. So we've taken our top 10 majors that are going abroad and away, and we've over the last 3 years, we've averaged those numbers and we have our top 10. And so right now, all of the advisors, what we're doing is we're generating a list of kind of our top 8 to top 12 recommended locations. So neuroscience, I believe, is one of those. They're different than psych. There's a lot of overlap, as you can imagine. And so we'll kind of have our top recommended programs, and then, of course, other programs that we'll list as, and these are good options as well. So we are working on generating that. Most advisors, we have spreadsheets, lots and lots of spreadsheets that we can pull in our advising sessions with the students.
Thanks. Is
Yeah,
there a
there's a
concern about having too many credits because by going abroad, it'll put you over and maybe put you at risk of not receiving the scholarship?
That's a great question. I haven't heard it with scholarships as much as I haven't heard it affect scholarships. But we are seeing more students come in either as transfer students or they come in with a lot of credit from high school. And so when we advise them, we are able to pull their credits that they've earned at Sewanee. We're also able to look and see how many credits they have transferring in. And when we advise them, we can go, uh-oh, you're at 58 transfer credits. You can only have 64 transfer credits. So if you want to get all of your credits abroad, we recommend like a Sewanee-led program because that's Sewanee credit. Or we say you can go in this program, but you're only going to get 8 credits, 12 credits that kind of go into your SOTA, which is the online degree audit for the students. So we are aware of that. We're seeing more of that, which I think is exciting. We love to see more transfer students coming in and going abroad, but it is something that we're aware of and we talk through with students as well.
Great. I think I saw where the Chaffins are offering to throw a big party at the rodeo if everybody comes to Houston to get their passport or their visa. That's awesome.
The
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I can run through just real quick. Passport, yes. So if they have a passport for multiple countries, you'll want to look and see which is going to be their easiest one to use, right? When they go abroad. But basically, an EU passport is a great passport to have. It gives them access to so many of the EU countries, and it's amazing. The engineering, the 3+2 engineering students, those are my advisees, which are great. They do have some difficulty. I advise most of them to go abroad as sophomores. If they go abroad as sophomores, it's going to work better for them. But we have a ton of programs related to engineering. So many of these students, they get to go abroad and sort of dabble in engineering, if you will. And so physics, I'm working a lot more closely with computer science, math. I would say those are the 3 majors that the students who are typically the pre-engineering are those 3. And so I'm working pretty closely with those majors. And I've sent 3+2 engineering students abroad as well. But it does take that student needs to come see me as a freshman, if possible, because it takes some strategy. And I don't know if I have any more. I think
did
that's
did we answer the one about 2 passports? Sorry, I wasn't
Yes,
paying
yes.
attention.
She just,
Okay,
yes,
yeah, I didn't hear.
yes.
Uh, yeah, I think that might be it.
All right. Yes. The final question I see at this moment is it recorded? And yes, we will share the replay if you got on a little late or want to share it with your spouse or something that wasn't on the on this session. But you guys are rock stars. You know your stuff, it sounds like, and have provided a lot of really good information. So I appreciate you spending time with us this afternoon and Thanks for helping the parents. And we'll provide, all right, with you guys, your contact information if they have any questions they didn't think to ask here. And then, just keep staying in touch.
Yeah, and we love that. I always welcome students to join a Zoom call with a student. I typically like for, if a parent has a lot of questions or a guardian, I know all of the advisors, we're happy to have a joint Zoom meeting if it works best for everybody.
Great, great. Awesome. Well, thank you all. And uh, one last question, best way to have a meeting with you and our student, or should the student just come by, or
Yeah,
you want to start with an email with the parent?
so on the Study Abroad website, there is Marcus, you might have to remind me, but basically there's a link that says like Study Abroad Advisors, or maybe you could put it there. And in the Study Abroad Advisors, it brings up a Google Sheet. And that Google Sheet basically like my Calendly, I have a Calendly link that's right there. And so people can just put a meeting on my calendar. I think Marcus is the same way, Sarah's the same way. So that is on the study. That's probably the fastest way, or you can send us an email and we can kind of go back and forth about what time is best. But all of our contact information is on our website. So that's helpful.
Yeah, I guess I could share again the process. It does, there's a lot there, but and we do hope that most students will peruse the website a bit before they schedule something, just so we can make that conversation as useful as possible. But there is, if we scroll on down here, eventually you'll see a list. There's three advisors here up top for the different majors, and students can simply click there, put something on our calendar, and come on by. And then we have a fourth member of our office, Georgia Hewitt, who's specifically for summer.
Right.
And then, sorry, Jennifer, I see your question. I'm just going to answer it. I would say have the student set up a conversation with us, and let's just have the conversation with the student. I think we want to get more information. We want to hear what the student's academic goals are. Like I said, that's something where, as advisors, we work really closely with the academic programs too to figure out what's going to work best for the student. And so, I mean, at the end of the day, we want our students to study abroad. That is what we want. And so we try to set up a process to make that happen.
Yes, and for those who might not have seen that question, they asked if they didn't get in the program that they had tried, and now it's past that deadline, can they try another program? So just stay in touch, and lots of communication seems like that will help. Kathy and Jim, I feel like you've had your hand raised for a long time. Do you guys have a question, the Chandlers? You can ask it. No. All right. All right. Well, this has been fun, and I can't wait to hear some really. Oh, Karen Roper, what's your question? Let's see. Karen. Maybe that was an accident. Karen?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, sorry, I had to find the unmute. Somehow I thought I was muted by you and I had no control over it. Thank you. So I was the one who said, I was the one who needed to reassure anonymously because I was too embarrassed to put my name on it, that I didn't know anything yet about whether my student would be going abroad, even though she has assured me that she's going abroad in her junior year on the Arcadian program, but she hasn't forwarded anything to me. And so I just want to make sure that that's true, that like she's got an acceptance email by now that I just need to pressure her to forward, or has that not even happened yet?
So I would have to ask for your student's name to look up the student. Then maybe that's a conversation we can have. Not on the.
Yeah, no, I just did. If you know about the Arcadian program, if you knew that acceptances went out, I think that general question would be fine.
So I think at this point, Karen, most of our students, so while they've applied maybe the general application to the program, depending on the program, maybe they're still getting their transcript from Sewanee. Almost every program requires an not authorized transcript, an official transcript that the student has to do through the registrar's office. So there's usually a lag time with that, maybe a week before that's actually sent. And so there might be that the student has to upload a copy of their passport, et cetera. So a lot of times the application with, if a student has not received an enrollment email, for example, it's because their application is not complete. So that's usually where, like if I had the student's name, I could look them up, right? And say, oh, the student's missing X, Y, or Z, or the student's got this. And yes, they have an an acceptance email, but there are some supporting materials the student submits with their application. Like I said, transcript, sometimes an advisor recommendation where a faculty member has to write something for the student. And so I would say if the student has not received an app, or if you haven't received it from your student, then ask your student, have they submitted all of their materials, and to double check that.
Okay, yes, I'm not trying to go around with my student, but I also don't fully trust that she's telling me what she knows. So thank you, Susan, for shaking your head and at least looking sympathetic to that
I
situation.
understand. All right. Well, this has been so fun. Again, if you have additional questions, I know they'll be happy to follow up with you all, but I can't wait to hear all the fun, exciting trips that they go on. But we will follow up with you all with this replay and contact information. Thanks a bunch.
Thanks so much for doing this. You guys did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.